Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell Podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. We're pleased to be joined by Ricky Taylor of Wayne Taylor Racing. Sounds good to say. Driving the number 10 Konica Minolta Acura with Felipe Albuquerque as his co-driver. How's it going?
Good, thanks, Casey. Yeah, it sounds good to hear back with Wayne Taylor Racing. It was a great 3 years with Penske and learned a lot and had a great time there and loved the team. But yeah, it's quite nice to be back with the family.
Well, you came back and you brought Acura with you. Of course, you guys, you and Elio won the championship last year. What has it been like, being back? And just, doing all the, and just being back?
It's one thing to the first time around of, leaving the family team after a really great year in 2017 and going to experience something completely new with Acura Team Penske. And then now coming back under a whole different set of circumstances, like, as you said, coming back with Acura. I think it was a big step for Wayne Taylor Racing to branch out outside of the GM family and take on a new manufacturer, a new manufacturer to them in Acura. And they can see immediately what a great partner Acura is. And I feel really lucky to be associated with such a great brand and to combine those two great relationships. Obviously, my family side with Acura and HPD, it's been really fun. It's been nice that, as a driver, you're always wanting to have some input and have some influence in how the team is kind of headed in what direction and whatnot. And this year, being the experienced guy with the car, finally I've got the engineer's ear a little bit more, and the team's kind of looking to me for a bit more direction. Obviously, Philippe comes with a ton of experience as well. Alex Rossi and Elio Castroneves came with the same experience as me, so we got the season off to a great start in that way, and I feel like the team is really gelling with the car.
Yeah, the 7 team turned into the 10 team, and then the 6 team literally turned into the 60 for It's funny how those things work. But anyway, you guys rack up another Rolex 24, the third straight year in a row that you guys have done that. Third straight, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, third straight for the team. So,
third straight for Wayne Taylor Racing. I knew I got something right.
I would love to say that it was all because of the drivers and blah blah blah, but clearly the team is the heroes for the Rolex 24. They've got it pretty well figured out.
What was it like, to win another Rolex?
It was great. I think for the team on the Wayne Taylor Racing side, this was probably one of the best Rolex 24 wins that they've had. Obviously, it's only my second, but for the team to do it as many times as they did it with the Cadillac DPI was great. But that was such a proven car at Daytona, and it's won the 24 hours so many times. And to take on a new car in their first event with that new car, to kind of unseat Cadillac of their Rolex 24 throne, I think was a big shock to the racing world, and just goes to show what a solid team Wayne Taylor Racing has become, and how what a force they are kind of in endurance racing and these big marquee events.
When you look at, you have another endurance race coming up this weekend. You have the 12 Hours of Sebring. You have, of course, you and Philippe, the two drivers that will drive the 10 all season long. And then you also have Alexander Rossi with you guys as well. Of course, between the three of you, just kind of talk about, running the 12 hours, because it seems like we just were there just a few months ago.
Yeah, we were just there. And we had a bit of a rough race. It was a rough race for everybody, actually. A lot of mayhem, and ultimately we got a little lucky in how we won the championship in that event after having some technical issues early in the race, and the 10 car having issues of their own on track, and then the 31 also having issues on track. And so it just goes to show how the 12 hours is such a dramatic event, and you can never predict what's going to happen there. Everybody always says it's almost a cliche that the bumps cause so much action, and and it never disappoints. And so this year, going back to it, obviously we have a good bit of momentum coming in. We get the number one pit stall, pit out, which is always a strategic advantage as far as the race goes. But it's a complete reset when you get to the racetrack. There's no such thing as, you can carry that over from Daytona. Once we get to the racetrack and we unload, we're going to have to beat them just as we did in Daytona. And the Cadillacs are always strong in Sebring, and that's another place where they've kind of dominated until last year when the Mazda won. But yeah, I'd say it's going to be a really, really tough event.
When we look at IMSA this year, because with the DPI class being, with the Acuras, you have the Cadillacs as well as the Mazda. It's a pretty deep field when you have, and then you bring in, Meyer Shank is back, Ganassi is back.
Yeah.
I can't remember, maybe a few years ago, but I can't remember a class just so deep in the DPI category.
Yeah, I mean, the car count isn't so high. Like, there aren't a ton of cars, right, but really every car is stacked. Mazda consolidated the one car, but that one car took two of the best guys out of each car and put them together, and then consolidated all the best mechanics, best engineers. So that's a stronger car. Ganassi coming in, you're never gonna be able to discount them. They're I think, was it 6 or 7 time Grand Am IMSA champion.
Yeah.
And they're never going to be able to count them out with the proven package and great driver lineup. And everybody's just so strong that the races are going to be unrelenting all year. I think anytime you release the pressure a little bit, somebody's going to be there to overtake you, and it's going to be intense. I think for 12 hours, we're already talking about how important qualifying is, which sounds ridiculous with 6 cars in a 12-hour race, 7 cars in a 12-hour race. But yeah, it's you can't really give up anything at any time.
So, for people that don't know sports car racing, and, as the series gets popular, when you talk about endurance racing, how often for you, Philippe, and Alex, between the 3 of you guys, how long are you going to spend in the car?
So, yeah, I mean, we've actually just had our strategy meeting on Friday, and there's a couple of different kind of approaches we have. We have sort of the car feels good, everybody's comfortable in the car, it's easy to drive, and in that situation, we're going to do 3 stints at a time, maybe 4, which is getting close to 2 hours, 2.5 hours in the car. But that's at most at a time. But more than likely, with how intense the race goes, it's a bit more taxing on the drivers. So we'll probably do about 2 to 3 stints each time. So hour and 15, maximum 2 hours. And then you're out of the car for, 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours at best. And then you're right back in. So, I mean, if you split it evenly, if you assume that we all do the same amount, it's 4 hours each. But the tough thing coming to Sebring versus Daytona you can drive for a long time and give your teammates rest. We have 4 drivers. But here in Sebring, the stint lengths can be so short because it's so physically demanding that each rest that you get is also shorter. So it keeps adding up through the race. And I think it comes down to how fresh you can be in those final few stints to kind of go for the win.
So kind of like when you talk about like kind of like driver changes and all that, how have you been getting better at that over the years?
Yeah, everybody kind of has their own way of doing it. Honestly, the drivers have the easy part in the driver change process. Some teams put more responsibility on the drivers, and some we have a helper. So some will have more responsibility on the helper. But the cars, the prototype class cars nowadays the cockpits are really small, and you still have, the full 5-point belts and everything. And so it's about, unhooking all those. We don't have a helmet blower anymore, but getting out of the car, getting the other guy back in. And really the hardest work is for the belt guy, the helper, because he has to plug all those things in as we're kind of flailing around in there. And and then make sure he gets the door closed and everything. But over the years, you kind of learn what works for you, and you learn little tips and tricks here and there. And, you know, the order of what you do things is really important. And honestly, just practicing. When we first started with this car, we couldn't break 30 seconds. And by the end of the season in 2020, you know, we were doing a driver change in 14 seconds, and that's just practice. It's almost the same process, but just practice and practice and practice.
So what's it like going around? Like, you know, we always see in multi-class racing, because if people don't watch IMSA regularly, there's all these different classes of cars, because you have GTD cars, you have GTLM, and then you have the LMP2, and then this year the LMP3. What's it like, especially getting around DT traffic? What is that like for you on the rate during the race?
Yeah, as you said, there's 5 different classes of cars. I think luckily we're in the fastest class of cars. We actually have it the easiest. But for us, in some of the other classes, in the GTB and the LMP3 and LMP2, they have pro-am lineups. So they have a professional driver and an amateur driver in the car. And when the professional driver's in the car, you can dive bomb him. You can, you know, trust that he knows where you are at all times. You can pass him in maybe some not very regular passing areas, and you can be pretty relatively safe. But the risk comes when there's amateurs in the car, and they're focused on going as fast as they can, not crashing. And they're most of the time, 90% of the time, they're looking straight ahead, and they don't have any awareness of what's going on behind or next to them sometimes. And so those are the guys you really have to take care of. And in the sprint races, it's easy because you know the amateur driver is going to start, and then the professional is going to finish. So you know who's in the car at all times. But at the 12-hour and for Daytona, for some of the long races, you lose track of that. And then you don't know if it's a pro or an AM or where they're going to break or whether they see you or not. And so it's a lot of trust and really making sure you don't hesitate and making sure your car is well alongside so they can see you. But for them, I mean, you have to think of both sides. They're driving a much heavier, less downforce car that does not handle very well. And so for them, they're hanging on. They're on the ragged edge at all times. And when we just put the car somewhere, it could really unsettle their car. So you kind of have to consider that as well. They're watching their mirrors. They're looking ahead. They're racing their own deal. And they have a lot more going on than we do. So it's difficult on both ends.
What's it going to take to get another win at Sebring?
I think, you know, over the past 3 years, we never, with the ARX05, we never made it, you know, to the end of the race unscathed. At least in the 7 car, we didn't. And, you know, the key to Sebring, you got to be there at the end. And I think we've had the pace. We tested there a few weeks ago, and the car's especially very good at night. And it's such a shame that we haven't been, you know, fighting for a win in those conditions, because I feel like we really could have a chance. And so for us, the key to winning is going to be that we have to be in contention in the top 3. I'd say if we're a lap down, we have no chance. So we have to survive, but also maintain that track position, because as we've talked about earlier, it's so difficult to overtake, and it's so competitive with this tight field that we're going to have to position ourselves in the top 3, 2-3 hours to go. We should have a chance.
Yeah. All right, Ricky Taylor, thank you so much for spending some time with us, and good luck this weekend at the 12 Hours of Sebring.
Cool. Thank you, Casey. Thanks for having me on.
No problem.